believe the OK is on the top of your screen if you're not familiar, at least my new.
Yeah,
Uh,
the interface has changed. It is June 4th, 2024, another Tuesday. First Tuesday of the month, which means the monks from Abhayagiri will be at the Berkeley Buddhist Monastery at, from 5 to 6, and then from 7:30 to 9, if anybody is in the area and would like to encounter these inspiring teachers. And I can actually give you more information on that later. But start with sitting. Wait a minute or so till we seem to have everyone arrived. Yeah, so I've got a couple more Tuesdays before well, then next Tuesday I'll be in Berkeley, so at the Berkeley Buddhist Monastery. So again, Tuesdays are the time to go there, apparently. I will be heading out, I think on the 18th to Atlanta, and then a retreat in, I should put that on my website, shouldn't I? So managing the website, managing the Kevin Griffin brand, almost a full-time job, annoying. So let's just be done with all this and do some meditation. So just settling into your posture. So we sitting upright, if that's workable for you. Certainly an advantage of being at home or on your own is that you can sit in any way that's comfortable for you. And coming into stillness, letting the shoulders release, softening the belly, relaxing the jaw. We're finding those points in the body that tend to hold tension, tend to tighten, seeing if we can soften around those. Feeling the body breathing. And as we begin to sit, just checking in with the mood and the energy. Is your mind stirred up, or is there a sense of calm? Are you awake and alert, or fatigued, dull? Just acknowledging, not judging or trying to fix. See where you are right now. And then letting the attention focus more specifically on the breath. That the breath becomes the central object of meditation. isn't to block out other elements of experience, but simply to give us a central point of feeling the breath at the nostrils or the belly, wherever it's easiest for you to settle the attention. You might make a soft mental note with the breath. In, out, if you're following the breath at the nostrils, or rising, falling, if you're following the breath at the belly. What does the breath feel like? What does an in-breath feel like? What does an out-breath feel like? Is the breath interesting enough to explore, and you arouse your interest in the breath, even though it's such a simple sensation, simple experience. And as we begin to engage the breath in this way, we're often challenged by the busyness of mind. We get swept away with thoughts, stories, judgments, plans, complaints. And our practice is simply to let go, come back, be here. And you allow thinking just to happen without being bothered. Okay. So before I get into the topic of the day, I'm going to put the information about the monastery in the chat.
You didn't hear the bell again.
You didn't hear the bell? That's interesting. I, it no longer has my interface no longer has the option for what I always use, which is the background. What is it? The original sound for musicians. That's normally. That's normally on the screen, and so I have to go into under the mute button, the arrow there, and then I see the option under the audio profile. So you're not hearing, you don't hear that?
Nope.
Interesting. But you hear me speaking.
And I just heard a little bit of the bell.
Can you hold it closer to the mic and try it again? A little harder.
No, I mean it's plenty close to the mic. It's right
Your
there.
volume's kind of low in general, to me at least.
Yeah, I'm wondering. I see my input level is kind of low, but I don't think that's why because maybe the microphone itself is low. All right, well, technical difficulties. I will work on it. I think maybe I did turn my mic down at some point. I did notice it sounded quieter in my earbuds. All right, sorry, folks. So I am going to my notes, which I have in Word. So for those who have been here, we have been working our way through the book More Than Mindfulness from the Abhayagiri Monastery. And we're in the chapter number, oh, they're not numbered. Okay, good. It's the one by Ajahn Jayasaro, and it's called the Paramis as Practices of Liberation. And the Paramis are a list of 10 qualities called perfections, that it is said that the Buddha perfected these 10 qualities during his many lifetimes preparing to become the Buddha. Whether that's true or not is not particularly significant, but they certainly offer us some great teachings and guidance for how to live. So we covered the first few last week. I'm going to go through all 10, just quickly list them. So they are generosity, or dana in Pali, sila, which is morality, renunciation, wisdom, patience, energy, truthfulness, resolution, loving kindness, and equanimity. And I believe we went through the first 5 last. I think we got to patience. I'm going to go back. At the end of the chapter, there's a kind of quick description of all 10. So I'm going to come back to that at the end. But just to go through, so starting with energy or effort. So Jayasaro addresses this more as effort. In Pali, it's virya, Viriya, which he says is related to the word for hero. So it's what he calls heroic effort. But and he goes through the 4 classical efforts. He says the first effort is to protect the mind against an unwholesome state, which is unwholesome states which have not arisen. And then the second is these are 4 efforts, the 4 great efforts, we usually call them, to abandon arisen unwholesome states. Then third is putting forth the effort to give rise to wholesome states of mind. And then putting forth the effort to care for, nurture, and bring to maturity those that have already arisen. So I typically describe these as avoid, abandon, I'm typing these now, cultivate, maintain. So that's a quick way to remember the 4 efforts, and we can think of them also. Oh, there's some people in the waiting room. Got to let them in. We can think of them then. The 4 we can divide into 2 pairs: 2 that deal with the unwholesome and 2 that deal with the wholesome. So I'm trying to plant in your mind a way to remember these efforts, right? So we got 2 unwholesome, 2 relating to unwholesome, 2 related to wholesome. So the 2 with the unwholesome are to avoid stuff. Don't go there, right? Don't let that come up. Don't go into the bar. Don't go down the liquor aisle, for instance. Don't drop by the drug dealer to have a cup of tea, and chat. But in meditative terms, avoiding becomes much more challenging, really. We're much more involved in the second effort, which is to abandon, right? To let go of the things that have arisen. And so that's much more of a common sort of thing that we can clearly relate to. So then the second pair, the cultivate and maintain, are, cultivating is like, oh, I want to develop typically just loving kindness, right? And simply by sitting down and trying to follow the breath, we're trying to cultivate mindfulness and cultivate concentration. So it's just the positive effort to do something, to get something going. And then once it's aroused, once mindfulness or concentration or loving kindness is aroused, that we try to sustain it. Sustain is just as good a word as maintain. So, this is a classical way, and it's, in the suttas that we talk about effort, and it's interesting that so often we'll see in Dharma teachings this, I want to say confabulate. No, that's not what I mean. The kind of merging energy and effort as if they were the same thing, and they're not the same thing. I mean, because energy is something that, generally speaking, we don't have as much control over as our effort. We can kind of arouse effort. It's more difficult to arouse energy. And so to me, working with energy is more about how we relate to, if we're tired or if we're agitated or if we're anxious. And in regards to that, the classical teaching is the one about the tuning the lute, to be tuning any stringed instrument, guitar, that you don't tune it too tight. That's too much energy. Don't make it too loose, too little energy. But again, it's difficult for us to control these things. So I think working with energy is more about being present and accepting that. Although there are, again, classical teachings about, open the eyes, or, if you're falling asleep, get up and take a vigorous walk and then sit down to meditate. And certainly these are useful suggestions as well. One of the things that I really appreciate about the Thai forest tradition is summed up by something that Jayasaro says. He says, it's better to put forth consistent effort than, quote, spectacular effort with periods of rest and relaxation. So what this to me is pointing to is the keep showing up, like, there can be this idea, okay, I'm going to go on a really long retreat and I'm going to get enlightened. And then afterwards, it's like, oh, okay, well, now I think I'll just like kick back and, um, why bother? I mean, I've actually heard people like say after a retreat, oh, I was meditating so much. Now I'm going to take a few days off from meditating. I'm like, no, that's just the wrong idea. You've cultivated this, now maintain it. And certainly this, I relate to this in terms of recovery. There's no way you can speed up your recovery, right? Like it's just one day at a time. It's just what it is today. And there's always this challenge of spiritual practice, of personal development, is that you can't make things happen overnight. And when you do kind of push extra hard, you can wind up burning out, as I did after the 3-month retreat before I was sober. I kind of lost it. But so this, slow and steady wins the race kind of, I think, is really the critical idea with effort. The next of the paramis is truthfulness. Jayasaro says, cultivate a love of truth. And it's said that it's the one parami that the Buddha never broke during his many years as a bodhisattva, cultivating and before he became the Buddha. Jayasaro says, when you are truthful, it builds trust, which is a good point for people who have lost people's trust, that we realize how it takes a long time to gain that back. And, to me, this is like an essential, maybe the essential element of recovery, which is being honest with yourself, being willing to be truthful. It's the opposite of denial, right? Denial of our addiction is the not denial of the truth. And I will say that, so I think that internal total acceptance of our condition, letting go of any denial of it, is essential to, and as I say, maybe the key element of establishing recovery. Whenever there's some hesitance, it kind of gives us the escape route. And I love the story I often tell of someone from my earliest home group back in Venice Beach, who would tell a story about how she was talking to a newcomer who came to a meeting and said, but I don't know if I'm really an alcoholic. And my friend's reply was, oh, be one, it's fun. And, that's like a whole other approach to thinking about this issue, is like, oh, because why is it fun? It's fun to be free of denial, to feel like you're not hiding anything, that you're real. Certainly for me, sharing in meetings, when I started to do that, it was a huge breakthrough. Being able to be publicly honest was the thing that really, for me, established my recovery most solidly. Like, oh, I want to be here, and this really helps me. It's not just like, okay, I'm not drinking and using, that's good. Like, okay, my life isn't so unstable. But it's like, oh, this really nurtures me, this ability to be honest in public. And just, as an aside, is that that willingness is kind of what I draw on as a Dharma teacher. The next parami is resolution or determination. Jayasara says this is a good one to cultivate if you are a doubter. Again, when you think about recovery, it's like, are you really resolved to do this? Are you committed to this? And he talks about using vows. He says that in the monastic world, it's difficult to ordain. You have to go through a lengthy process, but it's easy to leave, which sounds, again, a lot like recovery. Like, it's hard to get sober, but it's really easy to relapse, right? And so he says that people often will commit when they ordain. They'll commit to 5 years or 3 years that, like, I'm going to do this, because apparently all you have to do is say, like, I'm out of here, and take off your robes and you're done. So resolution, is so important. I mean, just don't drink or use no matter what. I really like that expression because it just doesn't give you any wiggle room. And, if there's wiggle room, we're gonna wiggle our way out. I just think, again, this total commitment is so vital. The next of the paramis is loving kindness. I like Jayasaro's take on loving kindness. Says metta, loving kindness, doesn't discriminate. So it's easy to have metta for people you love or share whose beliefs you share, but it's harder with those we don't care for. But he says it's not a fuzzy feeling of warmth and love. It means wishing all beings well. We can wish for people, this is a good one, we can wish for people to recognize that they're creating bad karma and to abandon their unwholesome actions. That seems to me like a good way to approach working with difficult people in loving kindness, right? Because if we work through the categories of people that are suggested as a framework for loving kindness, when you get to the difficult person, you might have like cultivated this positive feeling, but then it's kind of like, oh, it's really hard to project that feeling or to really want this person to be happy. But the idea of let's see, I'm going to go back to his words. May you recognize that you're creating bad karma and abandon those unwholesome actions. May you abandon your unwholesome actions. That seems like a really good way to approach working with the difficult people. And finally, equanimity, Pekka. So Jayasara says equanimity is freedom to follow our desires that we value. Oh, I'm sorry. He says people consider freedom to be the ability to follow our desires, but that's a spurious kind of freedom. Sorry. Equanimity is, quote, the freedom from being compelled to act or not to act by feelings of liking and disliking. The freedom to be the freedom from being compelled to act or not act by feelings of liking and disliking. So the approach to equanimity addresses Vedana, the pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral aspects of experience. And equanimity is, just as he's saying, when we are not triggered by the pleasant or the unpleasant. Yeah, and this is, to me, this is, the ultimate, and often seems inaccessible. But it's very much a reflection of where my head is at, when I notice how easily triggered I am. In my book, Living Kindness, I talked about the word irritable, that it means you're able to be irritated, irritable. And, that we could make it more general, just to say triggerable, right? And because we all know that, like, we can be in one mood and something happens and we're like, oh, that's fine, that's okay, and then you're in another mood, the same thing happens, but you're like enraged or whatever, triggered, activated, as Vimalasar would say. And so, I mean, I certainly set this as a goal, and indeed a kind of North Star equanimity, like what would be an equanimous way to respond to this situation. But as I say, I also use it as like, oh, look how triggered I am right now. That's very interesting. Like, oh, I think maybe I need to do some calming here, So until we can be fully equanimous, at least we can use this as a barometer for what our mind state is at any given moment. So before I open it up, I'm going to go through the very end of this chapter for those of you who have the book. He goes through the 10. He says, in the practice of creating the foundation for and supporting conditions for meditation, we cultivate, sorry, we cultivate these kinds of liberation. Liberation from stinginess and selfishness, from attachment to material things, through dana, generosity. Liberation from the unskillful actions and speech which create bad karma, and from remorse and lack of respect, through sila, morality. Liberation from entrapment in the sensual world through nekama, renunciation. Entrapment in the sensual world. Liberation from prejudice and irrationality, from superficial and deluded attitudes, thoughts, and perceptions, through panya, wisdom. Liberation from prejudice and irrationality. Liberation from fear of pain and difficulty, through khanti, patience. Liberation from complacency, stagnation, and laziness, through virya, effort. Liberation from doubt and irresolution, through adhitthana, resolution, determination. Liberation from insincerity and hypocrisy, through satya, truthfulness. Liberation from anger, aversion, and resentment through metta, loving kindness. Liberation from addiction to feelings of liking and disliking through upekkha, equanimity. So, there's a lot in just this little list and the way he presents it. So I'm going to go back to something that really resonated for me this morning. Liberation from fear of pain and difficulty through patience. Because I am faced with, some knee surgery, and I've been really caught up in my fear of it. And yeah, and even my day-to-day pain that I'm experiencing now. And I just thought, it's not that bad. Yeah, I have pain. I mean, I've been playing golf. Like, how bad can it be? And, I just, for you to know, not that everybody, certainly it's important to you, but, I met with a surgeon last week who said that I'm a really good candidate for a partial knee replacement. So I'm probably not even going to have a full knee replacement. It's like, and, and there'll be some pains, like, but it's mostly the unknown, fear of like, what's it going to be like, what am I going to, and, you know, and, and then it's like, let's just get it over with. Like, yeah, right? Like, let's do it now. Like, no, you have to prepare. And I've got all this teaching, and I'm like, oh, should I try to do it, this summer? And then what if I go, when I go to Southern Dharma and I'm climbing the stairs there, like, I don't know. But what I have resolved is that uh, do I'm probably going to do this in the fall, and I'm planning then to do I mean, I'll still be needing to be active. That's a really important part of rehab, and Steve will help me with this. I'm counting on that. And others here, I think, may have had knee replacements. Yeah, okay. How many people have had a knee replacement here? Okay, thank you, Holly. So, but I think I'm going to teach a sutta study class from Zoom during the rehab, because I won't be traveling, at least for a couple months, and that'll give me something positive to focus on. And I've actually been thinking about it already, and we've done this before. We had a year-long, I guess, sutta study, and I do think we want to. I'd like to get that going again, and so that's the positive thing that I'm thinking about. So there you go. There's the 10 paramis. I mean, we could easily do 10 weeks on them, right? It's a very rich topic, and I do hope that people get a copy of this book, More Than Mindfulness. I'm finding it really a helpful support for my practice. So we have some time left, and I'm not going anywhere. So anybody who wants to comment, jump in and share, you are invited to do so.
Hi, Kevin. This is Mary Helen.
Hi, Mary Helen.
Can't figure out how to raise my hand, but at any rate, I really want to thank you for mentioning the surgery that you're going to have. I have some surgery, some vascular surgery scheduled in July, and it's the unknown and the fear of pain and the waiting, and I just appreciate that being shared in this space, and it will be okay. We get taken care of when we have surgery, and
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, and I've had to remind myself, and I'll keep reminding myself that 100 years ago, there just wouldn't be any treatment, and I'd just be walking around with pain the rest of my life, and I have a way out of that. I will say, one of the things that's really difficult is the drugs, and it's not for me even the fear of like getting addicted, but I don't respond well to opiates, and one of my surgeries, I've had a few hernia surgeries. Like riding home in the car, I was so nauseous. Anyway, let's not talk about those bad things. Sally, hello. Join in.
Hi.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see John had his hand up, but anyway, you go ahead, Sally, and John will get to you.
It's okay.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to say, as a veteran of 15 surgeries, and I was just listening to your 12-step thing on Sounds True. And as I'm walking along, my back is killing me. You said, when you have all this pain, instead of the resistance,
Yeah.
to turn right towards it and go into it, investigate it. And, I use 2 strategies that have come up in my practices for working with pain. Is that one, turning towards it, going right in it, and it like just dissolves into this bizarre ether, like the reminder that it's actually the story or the attachment in my mind versus the investigation of the pain. And
Yeah.
it actually gets really interesting when you do that, like for me.
Yeah.
And then the other one is so the knee is experiencing what the knee is experiencing. I go to a place like the center. I've had a couple back surgeries, broken back, and that's rather painful. And there's all these stories, right? I'm going to be crippled, all this crap.
Yeah.
So I go to the center of my thigh where there's nothing being experienced in my nice thigh, zeroness. And I go into the center of my thigh. And in those moments, there's you forget about the back or whatever. And I obviously have had to incorporate this detachment from thought, having gone through, and there have all been really interesting circumstances, which are irrelevant of why I've had so many procedures, but it's just like a whole nother experience to be had. And if I decide what the experience is beforehand, then I'm going to actually miss the experience that I have. And, but literally I was just walking the other day listening to you, and my back was killing me. And I just did that instantly. Like we said, I turned into it, went into my back, and it just still, it hurts, but it's not a negative sensation in a way.
Right.
We can only do so much with
It's an intense sensation. Yeah. Well, thank you for reminding me. This is what I've said in the past. Thanks, Sally. Joe, go ahead. I'm sorry. It's literally like the hands are like blending into the background, the raised hands, and that's why I wasn't seeing.
Totally. Thanks, Kevin. I just wanted to comment on it's really cool hearing, and maybe this is just obvious but lost on me, but hearing talk about this Paramis will lead to, like you said, especially you talked about patience, how it'll lead to I think at the end less pain, and I can't remember the other 2 already, but it just, that's something I can just lose track of, because I'm the good Buddhist. I'm just going to practice this stuff, but I often don't have my sights set on what do I really have to get out of this? And it can even affect my recovery, right? I'm oh my gosh, giving up X soothing behavior that is not helping me, but has an immediate payoff. And I can just get short-sighted and lose track of what really is the life that is being offered to me if I do choose renunciation, or if I am patient, or if I am, etc. So yeah, those are really good reminders.
Nice. That's great. Thank you. Thanks. Nice to see you here. Reminder to me is sort of that's what our practice sort of is. The word sati, that's translated as mindfulness, actually has to do with memory, and just like Sally reminding me what I said on some recording 10 years ago, I mean, that's really interesting when it's then feedback, right? But yeah, the hardest thing is to remember what's true, because our natural impulses, all the triggers are quite persistent, and they easily override, and there's our wisdom, our insight, and this is the sort of the brain chemistry of it, or not even the the neuroscience of it, how the reactive part of the brain is instant, whereas the part of the brain that has wisdom and understanding is slower to operate. And so we habitually get set off by these things, even when we, quote, know better. But and so there's this process of going, ultimately what I think an important part of this training, and so Sally kind of brought this up, is like to connect the feeling of being triggered back to wisdom, so that you're still triggered, but the trigger then also reminds you, oh, this thing is related to that. It's impermanent, or I need patience, or I need to apply. I can concentrate on this sensation and that'll transform it. So rather than thinking I'm never going to get triggered again, that's probably not a realistic thing, because of our, the makeup of our nervous system, which is, with its evolutionary purpose of protecting us. But we can perhaps relate the trigger experience, keep relating it to wisdom, so that then there is this quick follow-up for us. So I'm going to try to take that for myself today as my guideline for the day, of like, whenever the vow is, when I am, when fear of pain is triggered, just for today, I will try to remember to be patient, to be kind to myself, to maintain equanimity, and to remember that it's impermanent and empty. So thank you for hanging out. I know a lot of people, like, they come exactly for that hour, and so I do not take it personally when everyone leaves. It's not. I really don't take. I'm not triggered. So all right, you guys, thanks for hanging out, and see you next week. Peace.
Thanks, Kevin.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.